This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Yeah, we're going to have Awesome Dawson recut that because Drew, we want Drew more Drew. So
all right, well,
Drew,
with special guest.
Right, special guest. We'll give you some fanfare. Happy Greek Easter to both of you.
Oh, indeed.
Yes. Even though I'm
Orthodox Easter.
Right?
Right?
Even though I'm Armenian, I get a lot with the name. I get invited to a lot of Hellenic activities. So,
Doxy, Yassas.
Yeah, exactly. Drew, it's great to have you. You're, I think, coming to us from the East Coast, as I just discovered.
Yes, sir.
And
we've turned our apartment into a little studio here, so it looks a little different than our home studio. But the magic of Susan Pinsky is once again waving her wand here.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So we're going to start, Drew. We may do two segments here. We're going to start with a story that I don't know if you're familiar with, but it certainly got a lot of reaction when we did it. Gary, how long ago? Maybe
August.
6 months? August? Okay. And I know that I'm guessing that you're not familiar with it because Gary and I would do it on the Sunday Bard. And then Adam, while walking around La Cañada, he would encounter people who would talk about it, and he had no idea what we were talking about. I'll set it up.
I heard there's a story in La Cañada. I know very few details, but I know there's a thing going on there.
Right. And so the guy who champions himself as the number one realtor in La Cañada, Mike Kobasi, is married to a woman who we've actually had on Bard, Sandy Kobasi. And there was kind of flying under the radar, if you will, until Gary and I started talking about it, was a lawsuit. And Gary, you have a copy of the front of the lawsuit, but basically there were dueling lawsuits. And the first one was where the Sandy and Mike are first cousins. You with me so far?
So which the UK is about to outlaw. Did you see that? I did see that. After that. So interesting. Okay, got it.
They're first cousins.
Yeah.
And Sandy has at least two brothers. The two brothers are alleging in their lawsuit that that Mike had sexually molested them as they were growing up. So her brothers were sexually molested by her husband. She is then
just so I understand, just a couple details, if you don't mind. What are the ages of these gentlemen now? We know
they're now the 30s, I would believe.
And do we know the maiden 30s. Name here of the family of origin? Or is
it would be Hussein's last name. I think the father, Sandy's father, and the father of the boys is Hussein. Is it not, Gary?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Now, there is in California a look-back law, as there is in New York. And so under the look-back law, one of the lawyers who does a lot of this litigation, Ray Boucher, who I know, Ray sued. And actually, I know the lawyers on both sides. And Jerry Kaplan defended Mike. They went to trial in Burbank last summer.
Oy vey.
Oy vey is right. Mind you, in the interim, I mean, it's a horrible backstory. There was a tape recording that was of the wife, Sandy, confronting Mike. Mm-hmm. And Gary, do you have a little bit of that recording?
And where did that come from? Who did that?
I would assume that Sandy or the father, who knows, I could be wrong, recorded it of the other.
Is that legal? Is that admissible?
So I have a shortened version of it that we can play here, but we had Sandy on the show in August, and according to her, at least, her father recorded it without her knowledge. So
again, my question, is that legal? Is that admissible?
Well, it's why I love having you on, because you're not just a doctor, you're a good brain.
Well, and Mark, I want you to know, Mark, I was finally persuaded to do expert witness work. I am going to.
Which, by the way, who was early money saying you should be doing this for?
Everybody's been telling me forever I should. I did it once in like 1992 or something, and courtrooms make me so nervous. And we won that case, and it was a ridiculous situation. But I'm tiptoeing back in, and you'll be happy to know it's on the defense side.
Okay, very good. I like when you come in and give a robust defense. Gary, do you have it?
Yes, I do. Let's check out the shortened version of it here.
I'm telling you, one chance ما صار شيء. أنا أقولي كمان مش طائرون. I'm telling you.
حاجة denied.
They told us detail by detail. They're not lying. They're adults. They know exactly what happened to them.
They are not lying.
So fucking them in the ass is not what happened.
I did not fuck Abudu Kamal in the ass.
Yes, you did.
I did not.
Okay, then you fucked your own son. You fucked your own son. Your blood.
Listen. I made a huge mistake. I'm telling you, I made a huge mistake.
Now, so you understand, because I'm going to set it up, because this where we're headed, you'll see how it's relevant. She says, then you fucked your own son, or something to that effect.
Yes.
He has a son named Enzo, and and this came up in testimony in the trial itself. So there was a judgment, and by the way, as to this tape, there was dueling lawsuits that their poor kid, their female daughter, obviously had that's Enzo right there with Mike, and it was in Beirut after the verdict. Daughter tragically committed suicide.
Oh my God!
It was awful. They blamed the release of the tape because it was making a circle in the community.
Oh my God!
They sued for wrongful death. I mean, it's just been a mess. But ultimately, what happened is, Gary's got the headline here. There was a $24 million judgment against Kobasi, and he vowed to appeal. I think if you go down to the last part of this is a Valley Sun, which we always tease about for many years. He says at the very end, the truth will come up, is what he wrote. And interestingly, there has been, and the reason I thought about all this is I saw where the opening briefs were due in April, so I checked back this week. And one of the things that occurred to me, why do you have this ad, Gary, that he had put out? Here's an ad that the truth will always prevail, which is a full-page ad that he ran. One of in the community here, a lot of people speculate that the reason this got no attention is because he's a major advertiser in the local papers and local.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, didn't want to cover it. Well, interestingly, then we saw this week where his appeal, he vowed to appeal, the truth will come out, and then the appeal was abandoned. Do you see this, Gary? Does Gary have this?
I think it's this one.
Yeah. So they notice of abandonment of the appeal. And if you look up at the top, it's all under John Doe's, but you can see where Mike Kobasi's name is there. So he abandoned the appeal, which made very little sense to me, since he had vowed to appeal.
Now is that, again, just the dilettante jumping in here again. Is that maybe just math? Like the attorney said, hey, the appeal is thin. I think we can win, but it will cost you about $25 million to do the appeal. So therefore, we might as well just settle.
Interesting. So I go back to, that's in the Court of Appeal. So I'm glad you asked that question. Gary, the intrepid investigative reporter that he is, went back and found an order signed by the trial court judge, or issued. Take a look at this. This was issued the same day, April 11th. You see up at the top, John Doe, AK versus Doe 1. You'll see where they lodged a stipulation to vacate the judgment, proposed order. It says the parties entered into a settlement agreement, which says that the judgment shall be set aside. So what they
there it is.
Entered into a settlement agreement, and they now wanted the judge to bless setting aside the $24 million judgment. Interesting,
which he did,
right?
Which he did, right?
No, this judge he was not buying what they were trying to sell. Go, Gary.
Oh, God.
It's unbelievable. So in his order, he not only refuses to bless it, he tells them, look, I don't even think I've got jurisdiction. Even if I had jurisdiction, I'm not going along with what you're trying to sell. And there's a paragraph there, which Gary is going to pull up here in a second, in the order, in which he says that this judgment, and when you pull it up, then I'll tie it all back together, and then I'll ask for your things. Gary, do you see? I think it's on page 2.
This is wild.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's go right here.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
the
look
adverse
at it.
effects clause. Are you looking at that one?
Yeah, right. Take a look first with respect to the possible adverse effect on non-parties of the opponent. This is a case in which the plaintiffs made allegations of sexual abuse. The jury found there was a preponderance of the evidence proving such allegation. It was alleged that the abuse extended to one other family member, which I assume the judge is referring to Enzo. Much energy has been spent recently in our society on the issue of whether such allegations should ever be covered up.
Oh my gosh.
Even if they fail for a lack of proof or are disproven. Vacating in this judgment, the judgment in this case would create a record that would facilitate such a cover-up. Second, the possibility of erosion of public trust. This was a public trial. The parties used their real names. Jurors and alternates gave their time and attention and made findings. Vacating the judgment does not seal that record, but it leaves the jurors and the public with the impression that the court approved discarding the verdict after the fact. Once again, this would facilitate a cover-up.
Yes,
wow.
Those two things come in for my opinion. But did you notice there's a third one in there too, which was also equally as bizarre, which was you should have settled before.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like, well, they didn't. They tried to, I'm sure, and now they've settled. What difference does it make what the temporal relationship is with any of these things? So insane. Who is this judge?
He's in Burbank. And
Burbank.
He presided
Burbank.
over.
Hey, don't tell me anymore. Burbank. That's all you need to say. Yeah. People are not from the area do not understand. Burbank is populated by it all started with jaywalking citations, let's say in Burbank 15 years ago. And their overreach just continued ever since. And they have been progressing, let's say, on all fronts in the city council and in the judiciary and everywhere. And it's just really a shit show.
I don't know. They've always been fair to restaurants.
I was going to say, Adam and I have had a long-running fixation on their current mayor, Constantine.
Yeah, it's wild. So there's Burbank. So I look at two things. When two things jump out at me when I see those two paragraphs. One is who the hell were the expert witnesses, and why didn't they bring up what I'm about to bring up? Number one, and number two, who the hell is this judge? Like, where does he come off with those? Those are not. That is literally. It's administrating law from it's creating law or creating culture from the bench. I didn't know that was his job. I thought his job was to adjudicate on the law.
I think that part of what he was trying to say is you're not going to waste the court's time and the public's time doing this trial. Wait until you get to the Court of Appeal. Try to divest me of jurisdiction by abandoning the appeal, because he technically has no jurisdiction when you're up on appeal. The trial court has been divested of that.
I see.
Then the abandonment of an appeal, I think he recognized you're just trying to get it back here so that you can cover it up, and he's not going to be part of it. He's not.
I see. So if you said
there were people who said, that Kobasi may have been one of the worst witnesses they've ever seen in a courtroom.
Wow.
And
that's interesting.
And so I'm not sure. And who knows? You can't psychoanalyze after the fact, but there's part of me that says this judge was not having anything that they were selling.
Well, if he had said precisely what you articulated, I would go, "Oh, okay, I get it, I understand." But that's not what he said, though. But you're giving him the benefit of the doubt. So fine.
I am because that's a very good point, because he kind of invites them to make further factual findings, or not findings, but proposals to when they come back to deal with this. I don't think the fact that this has been tried to be covered up under the radar. One of the reasons that I thought it was important that we at least discuss it is, I've heard from a lot of people in the community that Kobasi's running around saying, the truth will. Well, I haven't heard.
He's running around. He put it in bold letters in the newspaper.
Right. And we, on the contrary, the truth didn't always prevail. And maybe who knows where that judge lives? Maybe the judge lives in La Cañada and is a little offended by that.
So here's the big issue, of course, which is that childhood memories, even of profound traumatic events, are notoriously distorted. This has been established over and over and over again in the medical literature. Now, for somebody like me, when a patient comes in and reports something like that, my job is not to question it. My job is to support it and attune to the person managing the feelings around that.
Are you also a mandatory reporter?
Yes, I would have to report it also.
So you've got to manage that as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah. But what I want to point out, I want to make a distinction between what my responsibility is and how I would approach those sorts of reports versus what is reality. I don't know what is reality when a patient comes in with those sorts of reports. I know many times I think to myself, this just doesn't pass the sniff test. And oftentimes, the more sort of elaborate and bizarre the memories are, the more I tend to, it doesn't tend to connect with reality as I understand it. And the patient's psychopathologies tend to be pretty intense. We see just from the recording that family's got a lot of stuff going on. And so we know that they come from a lot of spin, something's going on there. And then again, these memories are notoriously inaccurate. So there's a whole, as you, Mark, I'm of course is aware, and you're all aware, listen to this podcast, there's a whole world of just witness memories. A friend of mine is an FBI reporter. You ought to interview him in here. A guy named Bobby, what's Bobby's last name? Somebody help me. Anyway, he's a great guy. And he runs symposiums on memory. So people are coming in there to study memory and eyewitness reports. And before the symposium starts, he has somebody argue in the corner, and then people come in and kidnap a couple of people. Okay. And then he goes around the room and goes, what just happened? And he says somewhere around, I don't remember the exact numbers, but a very tiny minority actually get it right. Everyone else gets the race wrong, the section, the gender wrong. I mean, everything. Who was abducted? Everything completely messed up.
What's so
an eyewitness account.
What's so fascinating about that? The Innocence Project, I believe, has put this statistic out that when they have freed somebody who was factually innocent from death row, that they did a study on what was the evidence that convicted those people. And the majority of instances were eyewitness. Yeah. Which is frightening, where people are that sure that in a death penalty prosecution, they will testify as if it was fact.
Yeah. And Bobby Chacon, that's Bobby's name. I'm sorry, I forgot his name for a second. You look him up.
Not Bobby Chacon, the fighter. Bobby Chacon,
the FBI agent. But I bring that up only to point out that is immediate memory, which with people with an interest in memory who are highly attentive with excellent sort of intellectual capacities. The average person reporting what happened 25 years ago, oh my God, is it distorted? And people, I mean, some people have very good early memories. They can almost have screen memories. That is a tiny minority. Most people recreate.
You ever run into Elizabeth Loftus, who's, I think she's locally, and I want to say that she at one point was out Claremont or Pomona or somebody like that. I've used her years ago for this, and I didn't want to step on your point, but she's done studies and has been an expert in this.
Yeah, I have. The name is very, very familiar to us. I'm sure I have, but it's well known. This is well established. This is not this is consensus material I'm talking about. This is not obscure or recently discovered. Memory is highly inaccurate. It's a constantly rehearsed reproduction of the past that gets distorted by a million different things. There are people that have extraordinary autobiographical memory. There are people that can sort of play a screen memory. My son Jordan is one of those people. My son Douglas and my wife Susan are not those people. And so whenever we have an argument about what happened a month ago at the restaurant. I just go, Jordan, play the film, play the tape, and he can just play it back like it just happened. And I used to have that when I was a kid. Fortunately,
wait, you had Jordan's ability.
Yes, I had that.
I believe that I'm more like Jordan because I periodically will tell Paulette, I wish we had a court reporter trailing behind us because I would like to read back the record.
Yeah, I know. And I've noticed it has waned with aging for sure. It's very different than it was when I was, 17. But it was pretty easy for me to roll the tape back. But that's a minority.
By the way, that's one of the reasons that you excel in school early on, because that kind of memory is perfect for rote learning.
Correct. And interestingly, Jordan and I both learned the piano the same way. We'd look at the music, we'd never read it, we'd memorize what was there, we'd look at our fingers, for the rest of for the next 3 weeks. We would never look up again at the music. And so that, then that's just the way, certain brains work. Minority of brains. Most of us are distorters. Most of us, and intense memories, particularly memories that have a high degree of emotional content for the parents and adults around. So again, when a patient comes in, I accept what they're saying. I believe what they're saying. I tune to what they're saying, and we move forward. In a courtroom, it is an entirely different matter. You're using this as an issue of fact, as though it does saith the Lord when an adult brings you a memory from the past.
It's fascinating. I'm going to, Drew, we're going to do an episode in a couple of days, and I want to talk to you about this Lori Vallow case because I've got some theories I want to ask you about.
Okay.
Thanks, Drew, as always, having you here. I think part of this, it excites me to be able to talk to you without any interruptions, maybe my interruptions, because I want to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
I think you're attacking Adam is what you mean. I don't know. But be that as it may, because I'm thinking about doing more expert work, I can't get enough of this, as I'm sure your listeners can't either. So glad to be here.
Thanks. And I'll call you as an expert very shortly on the Vallow case. Thank you so much, Drew.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.